Welcome to Guest Talks with Tracy Arvine, bringing you special guest interviews from musictalks.xyz.
Well, hello to Aly Cook, all the way from New Zealand. Although it's not that far away from Australia, welcome Aly Cook to Music Talks.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's good to be chatting finally, and it's such a clear line. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? It's technology, you know. Just imagine when they come out with that new 5G they're talking about.
Yeah, well, it's only getting better. It's only uphill from here, isn't it, really?
Well, we hope so, yeah. So, Aly, I just want to, want to talk about lots of things, actually. So you are a singer and songwriter, mainly in country music from New Zealand. What came first for you? You also have a company, but what came first for you, the music or your promotion and marketing company?
Oh, most definitely the music. Yeah. So I came from a musical family and, started my music fairly early in my life and toured off, and then the marketing came fairly soon in the piece, actually. I was probably about 19 or 20 when I went across to Australia. Mm-hmm. And as a part-time job, I was working in North Queensland, and I got a job working for Kevin O'Neill and Associates, who were a promoter that ran tours of, major Australian and international artists during the 80s up and down the coast from Darwin down to Maryborough and all the way in between. Okay. And I started being the poster writing girl, and that was the beginning of, writing out hundreds of posters and rolling them up and sending them up to Mount Isa or Charters Towers or wherever at Cairns or Townsville or Rockhampton. And from there I progressed. I kept singing and kept songwriting the whole time, but I kept my hand in a day gig as in working in other parts of the industry. Mm. My first move to do that really was to learn more.
Right. Yeah. And learning more it's endless, really. Like now, how often do we put posters up now with the internet?
Yeah, well, but you learn different things. You learned about the bricks and mortar. I think I'm quite glad actually that I was brought up during that period through the music industry, because I actually did learn the bricks and mortars of it, and it's still the same today, but it's different kinds of bricks and mortar. It's digital instead of being physical. It's not, although physical posters are still used around the venues and certainly used around towns and things, but there's other ways to market. So it's I learned about the marketing, I guess, and budgeting as well, because I was also a tour coordinator, so I went from there to booking hotels and booking the rooms and booking production, and it was big tours. We're talking hundreds of people touring on the road, and toured up and down with lots of different acts.
Wow! So you started quite young doing that and getting your head around what needed to be done as an artist.
Yeah, well, it was really in the middle sort of 80s that I was doing that. So I was based out of Townsville, and then eventually I went down and I worked for Edgley's, for Michael Edgley, and went across to bring back a 10,000-seat tent from England to Australia for the production of Starlight Express Down Under, which was an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. I toured with the Moscow Circus with them and Russian Dance Company, that sort of thing. Right. They were the bigger shows. And then I did some over in New Zealand when I came back here as well. So I always kept my hand in songwriting and music, but it was like the promotion side of things and tour coordination, first of all, followed by publicity, became like the day job.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. And so how long was it until you decided to, develop your own company in promotion and marketing?
Well, I've sort of always kind of worked for myself individually for different promoters anyway, but then probably I've done, even back in the late 80s, I was concert coordinators and things like that. So I've always worked for myself. Right. I've never worked, I've not worked for anyone else as a full-time wage. It's always been a contracted tour or so I've always done it. So right. I've always been self-employed. It's been what I've always done. Mm.
Okay, so basically, it sounds like you've been in it both sides for a very, very long time.
Yeah, over 30 years now. Mm-hmm.
Now, we touched on your music to begin with. Is it mainly primarily country music?
Well, no, actually, I sort of moved around. I've really, over the years, sort of written wherever I felt, I just wrote what I felt, and I didn't really think about I'm going to write for a genre. Yes. But I guess some of my songs are of a country nature, some are of a blues nature. I actually had a stint for a while in the 90s in a dance act, in a house act, and ended up with a dance house video on MTV Dance in Europe. So I had a stint in different genres as well. I guess I just bounced around to wherever I felt like I was doing it at the time. Yeah. And country I kind of really only got into in about 2004. Okay. Started writing some songs that were leaning towards that way, and that's when I first got into crowdfunding, and I put out my debut album at 47 years of age, which was the first solo album that I'd ever put out. So, yeah.
So with your country music, I actually find the country community absolutely awesome. They really bind together and support each other.
Especially in Australia. It's a very big thing over there, and, it is. It's like a big family. It's very supportive of the peers, and, it's kind of like its own little family, its own little nation. It's very supported in radio and community radio. There's a lot in Australia, a lot of country DJs and shows and stations, and it's really quite active,
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. With everything that I've been doing for Music Talks, the support for each other has been incredible from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice place to be.
It is.
So with the marketing, you have obviously used your own marketing company now to market a lot of artists. Name some of the artists that you've actually promoted in Australia that people might know about.
Oh, okay. Well, there's two different sort of levels of the marketing, I guess. There's the big tours where I've worked with some of the bigger promoters as a publicist, which I tend to do on my own.
Right.
Then there's so like I did the 2014 Andrea Bocelli tour. Mm-hmm. I did all the social media and ticketing for that across Australia and New Zealand, but worked with an Australian publicist, Belinda, who did the Australian leg of it, and then I did the New Zealand leg of the publicity and the advertising, taking care of the advertising budget. I just recently done Tommy Emmanuel's tour through New Zealand as the New Zealand publicist for that, so arranging all of Tommy's interviews and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then Sharon O'Neill, I brought Sharon O'Neill into New Zealand as the promoter and ran 2 sold-out shows in September last year. And then I've got another company that I've got with Therese McKee, whom I met online, and Therese was really keen to get into promotion.
Yeah. And
I needed somebody else to represent me, which is sort of something that I think, even though I've worked as a publicist, I still don't like representing myself.
No.
It's sort of like it's a funny thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a funny thing. It's not like you can go, oh, well, here's my music and I'm really good.
Yeah, it is really.
It's like an uncool thing to do, right? So you can't talk yourself up, and this is something that, it's the biggest bugbear. And even if you trying to write a press release and putting yourself in the third person is quite difficult for yourself. So Therese was keen, and I said, well, will you be my mouthpiece, and she was like, well, I don't really know a lot about it, but want to get into it. And so I said, well, I'll train you up. I'll just tell you what to say and where to read to do. And that began from that. And then she just had this natural way with people on the phone and approaching people. And she had in a previous life been a teacher. Oh. So her grammar and her, critiquing and copywriting and stuff of press releases was just perfect. So it made, because I'm hopeless at that, terrible, terrible. Always needing somebody to overlook my grammar and constantly having to do it. And even when you do, you still miss things. It's a funny thing, that. But yeah, having that there. And so we developed this company called Key2Artists Promotions. And basically I saw a hole in the market because I'd used publicists myself at the higher end in Australia, and I'd used publicists that were out there, and they were quite expensive for me as an indie. And I felt there was a gap where there was these people that maybe were great at what they did, but they just couldn't afford the promotion, or they'd recorded their album and they'd spent all their money on their video and they just didn't have a cent left to promote it. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that artists make.
Yeah.
It's all very well to have a great product and a great song and a great video and everything, but if you don't have promotion, you're going to be listening to it in your toilet. You're not nobody else is going to be listening to it if you don't give it some promotion. So, and to be out there and to be competitive, you have to get it out there. So I thought, and there's other artists that have trouble with aggregation and getting things up for sale or having a website, or and often the financial part of that is really restrictive for artists. So I wanted to have promotional tools that were there that anyone could afford. They could start from like a couple of $100,
right?
Rather than you having to have $1,000 to go to a publicist. I wanted to be able to give them a small, you could start with just this small amount and we'll get you 5 or 6 interviews and we'll put your press release out. Because that was the other thing I was finding. A lot of artists would use a distribution service to get their stuff to radio, but then they weren't very good at the follow-up. So they needed someone to actually get on the phone and say, have you heard of such and such and their songs on this disc or their song on this distribution service, and take a listen, or hey, I'll email you the MP3, and engage in conversation that actually meant that they could get some promotion. So so basically Key2, we looked to fill a hole in the market,
right?
And it's worked amazingly. We've only been in operation for like less than 2 years, and we've something like 25 artists already that have worked with us or are working with us, or so that it's been amazing and we've not hardly advertised at all.
Right.
Basically, it's been word of mouth, which is good. That's the way I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be so artists were really happy with the promotion they got and they told their friends. Often in this industry, the way it's been with the downsizing of the major record companies, there's a lot of people out there that, there's a lot of traps for indies out there where it's, pay us this and we'll do this, you know, and they're actually there's a lot of record company people that are setting up and in publicity and PR and stuff, but they've not maybe necessarily done that, or they've done that in an environment where they were paid a very big salary and they had the might and the weight of the major behind them. So they're not actually used to working in an independent environment where there's no money and weight behind you. It's just about building relationships with people in radio and in the media and asking them to cover this person because you want them to, So it's a totally different environment to working with a major artist. Doing publicity for one of our Key2 artists is quite different to me doing publicity with someone like Andrea Bocelli, where every man and his dog wants to talk to him and you've only got one television interview or one radio interview to give away. It's like a totally different ballpark, totally different game altogether. So just providing a service for the smaller indies, and it's worked well, and I like to think that people are happy and that they'll tell their friends, and that's the way the service that the customers will come to us, and that is the way the customers are coming to us. And I often say to indies, actually, if you are looking at an offer online or somebody offers you on something online, ask them straight away for 3 or 4 names of other artists that have actually worked with them, and go to those artists and go, you worked with Joe Bloggs, he's offering me this for $300 or whatever. Did you feel like you got your money's worth? And see what other artists, because there's a lot of traps out there where people get caught up, and I've had many friends caught up in various distribution traps and all sorts of things. And had they have gone and checked somebody else that appeared to use the service, they would have found that it probably wasn't a good idea to go with them,
Yeah, and there's so much advertised also online, and you just don't know who to go with first.
I mean, my favourite one is people coming to us going, put in a submission and pay, and we'll play you on our radio station, you know.
Oh, my gosh.
And I just write straight back and go, I don't do play for pay. That's called payola. You know, it's not actually kosher, you know. So you kind of, you got to look out. There's a few charlatans out there, and it's a bit of a minefield for young indies coming through, I think.
Yeah. You know? So with Key2Artists, that's mainly in Australia and New Zealand you promote artists, or?
Yeah, pretty much. It's mainly in the country genre. We've built our databases around that, although I don't mind taking some artists on the edge, and I am gradually building the database of slightly alternative, slightly blues, slightly folky radio stations so that I can feed out those artists that suit that, somewhere to get airplay, somewhere to get interviews. It's about getting exposure and all of that for them. So, and now what we've done is we've built a store as well. So our artists, our clients then that are with us can sell their CDs and their downloads on our store, and that's actually working. I'm actually getting sales every day. So that's like,
wow,
that's working really well for the artists. So, and then we've got the tracks playing, and so we'll gradually turn that into a radio station that plays the tracks.
Right.
So it's just a site player, but you hear that track and you can click down on the site player and instantly buy the track you're listening to. Right. So we've got that going on as well. So I'm trying to make it a little bit of a hub for the clients as well. And so once they've spent money with us for a basic PR release, then they can have their music on there to sell, because ultimately what we want to do is be able to sell our music, isn't it? So
that'll be nice.
Yeah. So that's, you know, so that's what we're doing there. So it's gradually growing. It's just a little cottage industry PR we are, but we're pleased with our results.
Sounds amazing. I love hearing where somebody's going to go, because quite often you see something and I guess a lot of people think, oh, that's it. They don't know what the plan is. You've
got to have a sort of a plan to get out there. You've got to look to build new audience. You know, you have your audience of the few people as an indie that love you, that support you, that crowdfund you or whatever they do, but you need to expand them so there's more of them. So it's a matter of, but as an indie, you're keeping more of it yourself, so you don't have to expand it too far before it starts to make you money. And then just advising our indies. I mean, most people are on to APRA and know that as songwriters they've got to be members of APRA, you know, putting your live performance returns and giving them those sorts of advice. But also really important is PPCA, which I'm finding an increasing number of indie Australian artists have got no idea about PPCA.
Oh,
they don't know it exists, and they're missing out on royalties they should be getting just because they've not signed up for that, which is your performance right.
Yes.
So, you know, we sort of do some education as well as helping out, you know, as well as being a PR company.
Yeah, there's so much involved. So what would you suggest to indie artists all over the world? You mentioned that it is difficult to write your own press release. What would you suggest to other artists anywhere who's listening to this? Where would they start?
So when you set out and you start with your budget to do your album, you need to make sure that you put some aside for promoting your album.
Yeah.
So you need to go X amount on recording, X amount on the videos, and X amount I'm going to have there for publicity. And then look, when you use people for PR or publicity, because it's not just writing your press release, it's actually somebody else representing you. And if you don't have somebody like your mum, dad, your best friend, or somebody who rings up and does it for you, you need to find somebody who's going to do that for you. And a publicist short term for a project can be a good idea. So it's just finding the right publicist for you that works for you with your brand, with what you're doing, with your genre, you know. But I think you definitely need that outside person to do that for you, because they will look and hear things in your music that you can give them the keynotes. I've won this. I worked with this person. This person sung on my album. This person produced my album, and he also produced this album. So you can have your keynotes, but the publicist will sit there. Like when I sit and I write a press release on when I'm doing it on a joint doc with Therese, or whether I'm just writing it and about to get her to edit it, I listen to the artist's music and I'll describe it how I think it is, you know what I mean? Like, so I'll put a totally different bent on that artist to what they'll put on themselves.
Yeah.
And looking for angles with publicity, like even if you're trying to get your own publicity, angles is something as a publicist that we look at all the time. So, for example, Tracy's a singer and she's from, I don't know, Hornsby in Sydney. So you look to the So you look at the local aspects. So she's from Hornsby. So you go to Hornsby, publicity sort of places or magazines or a radio station that's there, or you might be, I don't know. Like, for example, at the moment, here's a good example. I'm working with John Wright, who's an international cricketer. So I'm doing stuff as he's an international. So he was New Zealand's cricket coach. He was India's cricket coach, and he's turned musician in his 60s and done an album. And so who's the obvious angle for him? Cricket people. Because all of a sudden it's like he's a cricketer and he's doing music. So there's a certain amount of inquisitive people who love him for his cricket and his coaching,
right,
that check out his music.
Wow.
And so there's got to be an angle about you, like if you, somebody's, recording a song and they're having a baby, well, maybe there's a baby magazine that wants to write about you, or you try and find, it's kind of like, I remember when I was a big major newspaper and I was taking a band to Gympie Music Muster from New Zealand, and the big major newspaper in New Zealand the person who ran the entertainment section didn't think it was newsworthy, so they weren't going to do anything for me. So what I did was I went to the travel section,
right,
and I did a whole thing about Gympie's glam camping and travel, and I ended up with a half a page in the travel section.
Oh, wow. That's great. So it's finding an audience, isn't it?
Yeah, it's finding an angle of publicity to get, because as a publicist, we find the angles to get the person who's in the newspaper to write about it.
Right.
And a half a page of editorial is worth a full page of advertising. It's the most powerful tool. I mean, who opens up the paper or reads the adverts or looks at the adverts? They look at the copy. That's what they're reading. And so, it's finding the angles to make the reporters write about you, and building relationships with radio. I mean, the community radio in Australia is phenomenal. There's just so many great people there, and learning what they like, and each one of them tends to play the kind of music that they like, and learning what they like and giving them the artists that that they're going to like,
right.
That sort of thing. So it's just that. But as far as artists go, you do have to do the publicity. You can't not do the publicity. It doesn't without that.
No, that's right. Otherwise, all your hard-earned money on your recording is just going down the drain if it's just sitting there.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a very hard business, but you've got to look, and the same as you've got to look for the angles in publicity. With publicity, you've also got to get the angles to get your music out there and keep going, and you've got to look for ways to actually try and get your music into things, or for little, look for little movie makers that are indie movie makers, and make it easy for them to have your music in their little indie movie, and then all of a sudden they're pushing their indie movie and your music's in it, and things like that. Like, look for little, or you got a friend who's making a product and one of your songs works real well with their product, and then approach people. You just never know what's going to happen. You never know what. Like last year I put out Western Line was about taking the Sydney train. So I hammered Sydney Rail, and I in the end, Sydney Rail actually tweeted out and shared my video, and it was go for it. It put heaps of views on it, and I ended up with an article in the Daily Telegraph.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Sydney Rail just took notice of the song, but man, I had to write to them about 4 times, Therese did, about 4 or 5 times to make it happen. But I saw an opportunity and went, I've got to get these guys, even if I just get them to share it on their Facebook page or their Twitter. Got thousands of followers. It's just like, I'll do that.
Yeah.
So you just got to go hard. Don't take for an answer. I always say, get your foot in the door and then jam your shoulder in there before they push you out,
Okay. Great advice.
So you've got to be like that. If you're not like a bulldog, you're just not going to get your stuff played, and you're not going to get it out there. It's just not. You've got to just keep going at it, and don't lose faith.
Yeah. No, that's right. So, also have read that you have been awarded. You're an Entrepreneur Finalist 2016. And in the Next magazine in New Zealand, Woman of the Year. So can you explain how did that come about? And
so I'm not sure about the entrepreneur one, but Next Woman of the Year, I've been twice nominated in Arts, Culture and Heritage for Next New Zealand Woman of the Year for my contribution to arts, and basically working. I think the first time I did a song for alternative cancer treatments, which was a project for a documentary that was in South Africa called Forever Changed. And that was the kind of first of the sort of protest songs, ! That I've sort of done, and I've got another one coming up as well. So, it's sort of standing up for cancer patients' rights. That was to choose treatment outside of conventional treatment if they wish, because it's their body.
Yeah. Wow. Now, we were also going to mention go back to your own music. So, as you said, you've released your first album, the first debut album, quite late in your career.
I've done two now. So, Brand New Day was the debut album, and I crowdfunded for that. I was the 5th album in New Zealand to be crowdfunded when I did it in 2007.
Okay.
2007, and I crowdfunded, raised $20,000 US, and
wow,
it was stupid. It was like 4 months and 20 days or something. And then I crowdfunded the second album for €18,000
wow.
on that. So I crowdfunded both my albums.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that was cool. Doing the crowdfunding buzz.
That certainly helps.
Yeah, I've probably crowdfunded somewhere between 80 and 100,000 in total across all the videos and crowdfunding projects. So that's and it's brought fans, and crowdfunding brought a whole lot of different things. Actually, it wasn't just raising the money; it was the fans and people that sort of like a street team. Your crowdfunders kind of like a street team around your album, which is good.
Yeah.
So I'm just coming to the tail end of that album. I've got one more single to come later this month, Love is a Full-Time Job, and that will be the last single from the Horseshoe Rodeo Hotel album. And then I've just done this new song that's coming out this week. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about this one.
This one is a commissioned song that I've done.
Okay.
Called Poison Rain.
Poison Rain. Okay, yeah. So
this is not on an album. It's just a straight out song that's about a thing that happens in New Zealand. They basically, it's interesting actually, because an Australian site, there's a thing called the Australian brush-tailed possum.
Yes.
That the settlers in their infinite wisdom in New Zealand let go into the New Zealand bush in the 1800s. They had a habit of doing those sorts of things.
Okay.
And it went rampant and started stripping the bark and ring barking the trees, and they got wet stoats and weasels and things like that. So they're a pest here. So they started dropping this poison, 1080, and it's a lot of people don't like it. And, I mean, New Zealand has 85% of the world's production is dumped on its bush every year. And we've had a history with poisons here in New Zealand. We had in the 60s things like 2,4,5-T and DDT, which were sort of same as Agent Orange, basically. Some of that was made here, and it caused a lot of problems. And, of course, at the time the government said it was safe. It was safe. It was safe. It's a wee bit like tobacco. And a lot of people feel the same way about 1080, right, that it's, it's just too much. We do have a pest problem, but I think another solution needs to be found. And the people involved in 1080 commissioned me to write the song. Mm-hmm. And in some ways I've painted a little target on myself, and I know I've done that, but there comes a time in one's life when you have to stand up for what you believe in, and I truly believe in it. Yeah. There's a lot of oxymorons happening that they say, it doesn't kill native insects, yet it's developed as an insecticide, and the World Health Organisation's got it right on the top of the list as, as one of the most toxic substances basically known to man,
Yeah.
So it's very toxic poison. Although they say it breaks down, it's like you have to question how much poison is too much poison to be dumped. And there's lots of animals die.
I'm looking at those animals now, actually.
Yeah, and see, it was interesting how it came about. As a friend of mine in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, interestingly enough, they shifted away from New Zealand to the Kimberley, and they were the people who took me to the Kimberley, where I wrote that song, Kimberley. Right. So they were farming in New Zealand before they left and went to the Kimberley. They were on the coast, and they lost a large number of deer, which they tested positive for 1080 poisoning. So the government paid them out, right? But when they paid them out, they asked them to put their invoice in as stock food. And then other farmers were asked to put their invoices in on their positive tested animals. So they had to have their animals tested positive for 1080 poisoning in the first place to get paid out. This is where the pellets that they dropped from helicopters had either sprayed onto the edge of the land, or the wind had blown them or whatever, and they landed where they weren't meant to land. And it's dreadful. It's a dreadful death for a large mammal. It's horrifically painful. They bleed their eyeballs, They basically bleed to death from the inside, and it's slow, and it's horrendous, and it's cruel, it's inhumane, and no one can argue that point, really. And so basically, anyway, that's what first alerted me, because I thought, if the government's actually asking these guys to lie, asking my friends to lie on an invoice, why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that so that those stock losses don't go on the statistics as ever having happened. And some of our native animals do actually pick them up, and people are taking photos of dead birds after drops, and they've even admitted themselves, Department of Conservation here, that they have killed Kia, but of course they turn around and say that the poison is saving more than it's killing, but I don't believe that, actually.
No, they're horrendous pictures.
Their convenient science that they pay for says that it is safe, but then there's other scientific studies that say it's not. It's been banned in many, many countries. We use 350 times the amount that you use across your whole continent. It gets poured on our little tiny islands in a year, It's just, it's totally disproportionate. Well, 85% of the world's production is tipped on these two tiny islands at the bottom of the Pacific.
Yeah, and so if it's doing this to the animals, I mean, you've got to think that, everybody questions where does cancer come from, and so many other questions like that. And if you're eating this stuff... And
the denial brigade, those that actually sort of say the science says this, well, there's still people from the days of 2,4,5-T here in New Zealand that have still got deformities in their family that are still fighting the fertiliser plant, that was the plant that was making that stuff today. And they're still trying to call their so-called science. And, I mean, that's the thing now that the trouble is that I believe is that big business actually manipulates science so much, paying for the scientific studies, is that you can't actually trust the science. It no longer becomes good science because certain people have paid for it. So it's hard to trust, So the song Poison Rain is about bringing that to a stop. And there's a big movement out there, and I want to be part of that movement of becoming. I want New Zealand to become one of the countries like the rest of the world that's banned it.
Yeah, and make other people who probably aren't aware of it, aware
of it. Yeah, well, aware of the things like farmers being lied to, like them saying it doesn't kill insects when it's developed as an insecticide. Another good one is they dump it into water, water catchments, small creeks that feed water places where people are taking their water from, and they say it breaks down in water, yet they had some protesters threaten to poison a town's water supply, and boy, they were pretty quick to empty the tanks and clean it out and say, oh, it was, could have poisoned the town. Well, it's like, does it dissolve in water or doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's these oxymorons that they can't, when people actually look at that, they have to say, well, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Because if it's told to lie, something's wrong. So that's all I'm saying is it has to be looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have the link on the site so people can check that out and have a listen to it, and also go to support your single. Sorry, with the single, I'm not actually taking any money from it. So all of the money is going back into promoting the videos of TV Wild, the Graph Boys. Look them up. They're the guys that get in the coalface of this, and they get in there and film the animals that have been killed after these drops. Okay.
And so the money's going back into promoting their videos to show the public really what's happening.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I'm not taking anything from it myself. I just want it to stop.
Yeah.
I want it to be legal in New Zealand like it is in other countries.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. So, please, everybody get behind it and click on the Apple iTunes link and buy it to help support it.
Listen to it, buy it,
yeah.
Stream it on YouTube, share the music video when it comes out this week. Just get in behind it and support it. And I think in Australia there was some time back, maybe a couple of years back, they poisoned a whole lot of wallabies on Tasmania, and they used 1080 poison, I think, to do that. There was a big public outcry about it. Yep. That would have been the same poison.
Right, yeah. And I think we hope they've actually stopped using. I really hope they're not using it here.
Yeah, well, it's like anything like that. It's like any of those sprays, Roundup and things like that. They're banned in other countries too. Yet we're still using them. It's kind of, I think, we just got to stop poisoning the planet. We're actually killing it. We're just having too much. There's so much big business involved.
Yeah,
that's keeping it going.
Yeah,
but
it's definitely.
We've got on music and we got on to something else, but power of music to actually spread a message is, I love that.
Yeah,
and it feels right.
Yeah, and you can't really get it anywhere else. You can close your eyes and hear it. You can, there's so many strong messages out in music, and that's as we always say, it's so underrated as well. What's out there, I mean, the general person who doesn't understand music and who isn't a musician, until they listen to a song that they can relate to or something that...
Absolutely. I had someone the other day that bought the single, pre-ordered the single, and they said, well, I don't really listen to music much, but I can so relate to the words of this, so I'm buying it, because they believed in it. So, I think it's a great thing when you feel like you're using it to actually make a difference. It's a really good vibe.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Like I said, I'm going to put all that's all going to be going up on the site. And I'll put the pictures of the animals there as well, and everybody can have a look. And there's also a YouTube video link. Yep.
Paradise, which is a documentary done by TV Wild and the Graph Brothers, which gives a lot of it's a little documentary on YouTube, so I recommend that everybody goes and takes a look at that so they understand the situation.
Yeah, and check. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic, Aly Cook. I just want to thank you so much for your time and for explaining. There was a lot of things that I had no idea about of what you do with like the Key2Artists and even though I've been to the site because. But it's really great hearing more about it from you and having a chat to to the person behind it all. It's and hopefully there's a lot of artists that are listening to this and can learn from it. I certainly actually have learned quite a bit about the publicity side of it and using the angle. So that sounds great to me. Have to get my thinking cap on.
People are welcome to contact, if they just go to the Key2Artists Promotions.com.au and just email me through the site if you've got questions or you've got ideas or whatever. I'm always happy to talk to indies anyway,
Absolutely.
Support each other's the other thing I would say.
Okay, so would you take artists from other places in the world? Yeah, for Australian, New Zealand publicity?
Mainly for Australia and New Zealand publicity, but in saying that, I'm getting our Australian, Therese and I are getting our Australian and New Zealand artists played in USA, UK, Europe radio stations. We've got a lot of DJs on our list. My database is somewhere upwards, nearly 11,000 now.
Wow.
Media database, and that's media, fans, mixed database. So it's that's grown over a number of years, and I'm constantly upgrading it. So we've got a good access to people. So
that's great. Well, the links are all up there, so people can go and have a look. And everything's really easy to find. So get in touch if you're an artist and you'd like some help in your publicity. I'm sure Aly and her team will definitely help you out. We'll have a chat with you.
Thank you, and thanks for talking. It's always wonderful, and thank you for the work that you do with your online blog as well. It's cool.
Oh, thank you. That's no problem.
Family around that too. I often see it on Twitter and share people's things out, and it's cool.
Yeah, thank you. So again, and good luck with this the single that's out at the moment, and looking forward to the next one as well.
Thank you.
So have a great day, and hopefully we'll chat again another time soon, see how everything is going.
Okay, bye for now.
Thanks, Aly.
Guest Talks with Tracy from Music Talk.